We are going to start, and it's thank you so much, everybody, for joining us on this Center for Digital Play lecture. Of course, I will talk it over and. All right, so thank you, everybody, for joining us on this Center for Digital Play lecture. I am really happy to have today Kevin Marin-Rubio from the University of Barcelona. He's a PhD student, and I'm always happy to have PhD students and junior scholars here. But I'm also double happy because Kevin has been our guest for the last 2 months, and I was really happy when he accepted the invitation to come and visit us for a while, because I think the projects that they are doing in Barcelona regarding game literacy and how we can use games in public libraries and other similar contexts to help mediate and talk to kids and talk to young adults and just use them as an instrument for reflection. It's I think it's landmark work. I first learned of it 5 years ago from Lucas Ramada, who's a scholar and a mediator and an educator down there, and he's doing that work right now. And then last year I learned that there was somebody doing research on this, and that was Kevin. And I thought, okay, we need to know more about this, because one of our missions is to make sure that people understand how important video games are in culture. And I think Kevin's research is a very good way of explaining why we should care about video games and how we should create game literacy. So I'm really happy that you've accepted giving this talk. So the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Thank you, Miguel. Thank you for organizing everything. And thank you for coming. Yeah, I've been here for 2 months. I think I know most of you. And I'm super glad that I can make this presentation with you. So yes, Miguel was telling, I'm a PhD student at the University of Barcelona. And what I do, in few words, is an action research project in a video game youth club in Barcelona, where we just gather, we play some games, different titles, most of them indie games, and then we talk about the conflicts that they arise, and also about how they imagine the future in a desirable way. So, just today we will actually talking about the interdisciplinarity of the field. I don't know if calling myself a game scholar, probably not, because I come mainly from education. My background, it's in training education, and also I have some studies in philosophy. And my main research has been around critical pedagogy, with or without games. The important part of why I'm taking critical pedagogy comes from my background. I come from a working class background, and I come from a marginalized area in Catalonia. So for me, the class consciousness, it's something that is very tied to my research, because I'm doing action research, and I'm working with communities who are in the same situation or in similar situations. So this is something that it's impregnated around my research, and also how I approach and work with these communities. So yeah, now I'm in the University of Barcelona, tackling this lack of desirable futures. So what I will be presenting today will be an introduction about game research, tackling this lack of future desirable imaginaries, the objectives of what I'm doing, and in the methodology, I thought about bringing up how do we create the club, how do we select the games that could be interesting for someone who maybe are interested in making something similar. Also, how do we design these educational sessions, which is the data generation and analysis, and then for the results and discussions, which are still working in progress, because right now I'm analyzing the data. We will dive deep in one of the sessions, and then I will show some insights in general, and then some final thoughts. So yeah, let's go for the introduction. The dominant narrative of future collapse. I'm sure the most of you would sound familiar, this famous phrase about it's easier to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism. So Marina Garcés, a philosopher from Barcelona, she tells us that this is kind of a blackmail, where this common sense turns you into a position of accepting the apocalypse or waiting for an utopian salvation by a technological innovation that brings us with Elon Musk to terraform Mars. So against this kind of blackmail, she claims to estrange ourselves of this premise. She tells us, we will be not condemned, we will not be saved because we are not condemned. Miguel, who is in here, also tells something similar, like it will not be the end of that world, but of this world, late capitalism, however you want to tell it. So to address this lack of political agency of how we decide what we want in the future, Marina Garcés tells us to train critical imagination. It is very aligned to what in research also tells about critical utopianism in philosophy, sociology, pedagogy. Critical utopianism, it's about a dialectic between denouncing the oppressive structures that you don't want, but also you need to announce something. You need a project, you need a utopia system towards to walk to. And in this process of imagining a better society, then you get to educate desire and the subjectivities that wants to live in that better world. So what video games do with all this stuff, right? What video games have to contribute to that? In a very broad sense, at the beginning of my research, is that broad claim of, okay, we have video games like sandbox to experiment with different futures, with different families, with different societies in safe spaces. So for my master's thesis, I went to different theories or different proposals that they address this transformative potential of video games. Some of them can be augmented ontology, regenerative play, and I tried to articulate them through Utopia's method. Utopia's method is a proposal also inside critical utopianism from Levitas that does this critique, but also announce of utopia system and also this change of subjectivities. We will not. If you have more questions about this, you can make them at the end. But I will also tell something later with the selection of games because it's tied to these three modes of utopia. So if we go to educational research on this future-oriented, let's say, in this future-oriented gaming pedagogy, we have this very great map of Matthew Coppleton, who is a researcher of the University of Southern California, that has 4 axes: critical, learning, game, and literacies. The important point that they is claiming is that critical pedagogy can approach these connections between in-game experiences and out-of-game experiences, not just to learn content and not just to make us awareness of things that are happening, but also to transformative action. And it's also claiming that education through games requires education about games. That means that game-based learning approaches needs from games literacies. An example, if you want to talk about colonization through civilization 5, for example, then you need to know how the mechanics are, how the colonization is embedded in the mechanics of the game. Going to empirical work, there's great work with Minecraft. Very great work that I don't have time to delve into that. But one of the important things that literature is claiming is that games are not that important, but gaming. So we should turn from games to gaming. It's more important the act of appropriation, of subversion, of interpretation of players than the game itself, from this research who are working inside these approaches. And also that this is an emerging field. And there is a lack of empirical experiences that go beyond one single title experience. So it's in this sense that I'm proposing my research. So how to explore this critical utopian potential of games through pedagogy with a diversity of titles, connecting this game-based learning and games literacies. So here is where I draw some good examples of research in games literacy. Before we mentioned Lucas Ramada Prieto, who is doing a great job with more than 40 libraries and with the focus of training the educators for them to be autonomous and critical to educate the young people and the children who are playing and who are working with them with games with them. And also we have other researchers and educators that's like Jorge Oceja or Frederic Torres Úbeda, who are doing a great job in games literacies. So for my PhD, this would be the objectives. The objectives are very tied to critical utopian action research, whose funders are in here, actually, are from Denmark. And are these ones. The first one, how this critical utopian gaming pedagogy that we are calling, how it cultivated critique, how it supported the co-creation of desirable and alternative future imaginaries, and third, how it encouraged agency and transformative action. And this is the methodology that we're using to approach that. First, I'd like to talk about the context. The video game club was created this way. First, we get into the community through a national research project called Sense of Place and Sociospatial Inclusion in Vulnerable Neighborhoods. We're doing different things with educators, sociologists, geographers. What I'm doing is through games. And in here, when I entered this community, this neighborhood in Barcelona, I offered my line of research. And they told me, wait, this is already kind of happening in this neighborhood. We have a video game club already working called Go Gaming. And this video game club in this community, it consisted of a Pakistani community who gathered and played PUBG. They did some tournaments, and if they won the tournament, they could have some money for buying loot boxes in the game. So I was like, okay, it's not really my point of, it's not really my approach, but there is something good that they're making social cohesion through this project. This is already working. And there was an opportunity that the social educator that was with them was about to leave. So the project would die. So I entered that and I offered them a reformulation of this project into this more critical utopian with diversity of titles and so on. So it was supported by different youth entities. We did trial sessions to promote the club, reaching to 5 different groups of young people, and then we created 2 stable groups of young people that they came each week to play games and discuss stuff, like everything that emerged. And it was for free because my benefit was research. And this has right now continuity because we're a team of 4 educators. We've been through 3 seasons, and it has been 25 total participants till now. So the results that I'm talking today about will be mainly of the first season, this 3 months time frame. And they are mostly boys in this time frame with very high cultural diversity. Young people between 12 and 18. And each week we had sessions of 2 hours. And to investigate this gaming pedagogy, what I took was participatory action research. It consists of this cycle that you see in here at your right. For each session, I select the game, analyze the game, and design the session. Then in the action, we play the game, we do the session, and then I observe, we reflect about what happened to change the next game and the next design of the session. And this is how I investigated the gaming pedagogy practice. For the selection of games, these are the games that we played in this first season. Maybe you know some of them. And first, they started with relevant issues. I took into account the relevant issues that they arised. Also, I took some relevant issues that I considered important for them. I took the critical template for education from Paul et al. That I have it in another slide later if you want to ask me about it. And we did like a pathway from critical classical dystopias to critical utopias or sandboxes to experiment these designs of better future. And then something important is the 3 methods. The 3 modes of utopian method that I was mentioning before. So these are the ones: archaeology, architecture, and also ontology. So for the first one, it's about denouncing. Levitas tell us that one way of approaching utopia is to seek for utopian elements in the past. That's archaeology. And one example could be with Every Day the Same Dream. In Every Day the Same Dream, you do the same every day. You go to work. After work, you go to your house, your wife is preparing the food, and then you go to sleep, and the next day you do the same. So actually, there's a utopian element here, that it's one job fits a family. There's a utopian element. So that today's, for example, for the context of Spain would be impossible for a working class. But there's a utopian element here that it's disrupting what we think that it's possible for now. But also, this utopian element of a job sustains a family also has some implications, like you need a nuclear family, you have an alienated job, you have things that maybe you don't want at undesirable. So there are some games that we used in the cultural mediation for making this critic. Then the second step, it's easier, like design. Yeah. Take a city builder and we design something for a model of good society. And then we have education of desire and subjectivities. Through this process, how we change ourselves, how our subjectivity is changed. So these are the games in the first season. These are the second season ones that we introduce some games like Kids, or Stillness of the Wind, Until the Goose Game, Cloud Gardens. And these are the ones that are happening now while I'm here, because the other educators are doing them, are doing the lessons now. And one of the things that we do is having these recommendation catalogs. Now, if Miguel can help me. Yes, if you can share with them. Yeah. You can keep them. I mean, I think there will be enough for everyone. There are two types. Maybe there are not two types for everyone, but yeah, you can keep them, at least one of them. So another thing that we do is we play some games, but you can also find them in the community center, and they can go and play with them. You have here, for example, a QR to the Instagram account. We have an Instagram account of the project. And what you find in these guides is is some way for the parents to know them when they go to the store. What games could we buy for them? Because they're immersed in like, how to say, they buy what the market tells them to buy. I'm talking about the young people. So it's kind of recommendation to tell the parents that, okay, the teacher told me that these games are at least good, and maybe we can buy them. So now, what I would like to talk about would be the session structure. This is actually part of the results. What we do for the structure of every session is that we have this map, this huge map in the room. And this huge map, there we post their reflections, their questions. We stick in here films and their screen captures, and we try to trace the learning process through this map. And then each session, we start with the map, telling, like, to contextualize what we're going to do, and then we put a trailer of the game in most sessions to start to dialogue and to direct a little the conversation. After that, they play in the session for like 25 minutes or so. They play by pairs sometimes, or in small groups, or by all the group. And then I ask them something, reflexive photography, which is when they're playing and they find some question, some conflict, I ask them to write it. They write this conflict. And also they make a screen capture. So they try to link the reflection that they're doing to a specific moment of their gaming experience. And after that, we dialogue, and the dialogue comes from their questions. It starts with their questions, and I try to build above it. And then, when the sessions end, we put some of these reflections to the map, and then I select the next game according to that. So the last day, what we did was inviting the families, and them, the young people, told the families through the map their learning process or what they considered relevant. And we did some snacks, and also the families could eat. Also, they received this catalog of different games. And what I'm finding, what I have is this data generation of audio and video recordings, because we filmed everything. Obviously asking for permissions to families before. But the participants' productions, the map is, it's everything participants' productions. The map is still there, and the community can go and see the map, and other groups pass by and ask, what is this map about? My field diary, and also a focus group that we did at the end of everything. And for the data analysis, I'm taking reflexive thematic analysis. Now the results that I'm presenting will be about just the first phase of 6, familiarization, where I have taken notes about what happened, who took part, the themes that arise, and the contributions to research questions. But when I have all the transcriptions, what I will do, and maybe you can make some feedback about this, if you're doing a similar research, is I will be coding into participants' contribution. I mean, I will be highlighting when they are doing some contribution to a critique, to expression of critique, to a feature narrative. And then in that critical moments, I will look for which are the learning elements that are present. What type of games, if a reflection arises from a peer question or my question, if the map is present or not, and then get into some learning situation, to explain some learning situations that are triggering the research questions. And then comparing that to literature about the processes of critical consciousness. Someone is interested, I can also talk about these processes. And then we get to the funny part, the results. What happened in these sessions? First, I will be beginning to talk about everything. Maybe some of you know the game, but the point of selecting this game was first that climate crisis was a relevant issue for them. It's not a surprise, but the point of everything is that before we play Terranil and Landlink. In Terranil, you as humanity try to save the earth, or you try to save wastelands, like in some kind of exterior to nature, and with your technological innovation, you go to a wasteland and you recover it. It's a very Western and anthropocentric way of approaching the climate crisis. So for everything, as I will be presenting in the next slide, it's more about trying to decenter the human and break this nature-culture divide. This is how I selected the reasoning behind. So for the ones that don't know the game, it's a game where you can be everything but human. You can be a tree, and then you can be a continent, you can be a planet, a galaxy, and if you go to the higher place, to the higher thing in the universe, you get to the, if you try to upscale, you get to the tiniest thing. Yeah, a small dot, a lion, yes. So one of the questions that arises from playing the game is how we might perceive the world through the lens of the non-human. So to choosing this game, I took some materiality that sometimes research is not talking about. One of them is that it is free DRM. That means that I have a license of the game, and with that license bought, I can install it in different computers. That's something that doesn't happen for all games. And it complicates a lot the educational mediation of them. Another is that I can have a conversation, a critical conversation, with a 40-minute experience of the game. And for making that, we loaded the save file of the game. We didn't start from the beginning. What we did is that I considered that the main mechanic for talking about this non-human perspective was exploration. And that means that we have to have unlocked the move, action, the upscale, and the downscale mechanic. So I loaded the game in that point. And they started to play. And what happened in the session? This couple, for example, they wanted to become bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger all the time. So when they reached the galaxy, they went to be at the Planck distance in the universe, which is the tiniest thing that you can be in the universe. So they got really mad. They said, this can't happen. We want to become bigger. And then what I did just as a, like, let's say, problem poster education is asking why. And I made them write the question. And they started to talk for 5 minutes while playing why they wanted to become bigger. And they reached this conclusion: bigger equals more powerful. They said, they were telling, I want to become bigger because in video games, I like to be the more powerful that I can, and also in real life. So that's the point of becoming bigger. And then what I only did was like to add a question mark on that. Bigger means that you're more powerful. And they started to think about examples that not. And they said, after 5 minutes, okay, maybe cancer or maybe COVID are tiny things that has a lot of power to us, and we cannot control them. And they were telling, not even the Queen of England can escape cancer. They say, if a poor person like me dies, no one would care. The Queen of England, yeah, but she cannot escape cancer, at least. Anyway, so what we're seeing here is that making them connect their gaming experiences to questions and having them by couples talking about it, it's how you make an organic reflection of what is happening. And another couple at the same time were playing as a bacteria, and they were telling human beings in the galaxy. This is you have to imagine a 13 years old kid philosophizing and telling human beings in the galaxy are less than a bacteria to us. Spirit in Men in Black. Because he was referring to a scene in Men in Black where some aliens play rumbles, and inside the rumbles are the universe, and inside the universe are the tiny humans, right? So the game made them a reference about narratives of the center in the human. Also, a third couple was doing autoplay. In everything, if you don't play the game, if you don't touch the controller, the game plays itself. And they were envisioning what would happen if humans were extinct. And one of them was really shocked about this autoplay mechanic and started to think about why does it exist, this autoplay mechanic. And he reached to the conclusion that autoplay is to tell you that we think we dominate the world, or we think we dominate the game, but the game and the world doesn't need you. And he was making this connection. This is a great example, let's say, of how to link game literacies to game-based learning. And also they were telling humans are a plague to Earth. And we started to talk about what does it mean a plague? Who decides what is a plague? And we started to articulate this concept because articulating current concepts, it's something very important in critical pedagogy for building this critical consciousness. The point, one of the questions that I did to myself is, how do we change this narrative of humans being a plague to Earth? Because the game and also my mediation is not helping to change this narrative of humanity destroyed, this destined to exploit nature. Then we linked the game experiences to a personal local issue. They started to talk about how it is linked with the river that they have in their neighborhood, because you can have microplastics, and then you could play as a microplastic where you buy something, you throw it to the river, and then there's decomposition in the microplastic of the river of the neighborhood, and then a fish eat it, and then you eat the fish and it ends up in your stomach. And they were talking about, they were searching in the game, trying to be a microplastic because they were wondering about that. So they also asked about cancer risk emissions of a factory that it's near them, and they were saying that it's not the blame of citizens that doesn't do anything, or workers, it's the blame of the factory owner. So 2 questions to problematize like the mediation of this gaming practice is, how do I shift them, or how to shift the responsibility of individuals, of this factory's owner, for a systematic issue of the problem? Because it's not the blame of the factory owner individually. It's more a systemical thing that we have some factories near to people, even if they're bad for the health. And also how to encourage them, this club, to engage with these local organizations that I know some of them, how to engage them with them. Because at the end, if they want to do something, they could approach it with these local organizations, and I don't know how to do it. That's some of the difficulties of the work. So after that, we had some conversation around the concept of propriety that later, if you want, you can ask me about it, because I will be passing this slide. But something very important is that in this reflection, the map was used. We were just discussing, and some young people pointed the map and said, "This is like a Stanley Parable. We have the freedom to work or die." It's tied to the conversation before. But the point is that the map has its present, right? That the map acts also as a mediator. So after seeing this example, because this is just an example of one session, what's important in here that all this process shows how video game is triggering learning situations that you can take advantages of as educator. And the important part of it is starting from their conflicts, starting from their voices. And you can use some strategies to make that happen. After all these conversations, you imagine, like 1 month after, there was one of them that told, "This game really crashed in me, because we were talking about the propriety of the neighborhood, of the trees of our neighborhood, but trees in my neighborhood are not anyone's propriety. They are my neighborhood." He didn't know how to explain it. It was kind of a sense of belonging or cosmopolitics, that he wasn't separating the neighborhood from the objects in it himself. So he was very shocked, he couldn't explain it. And he also thought, "I can't run over cans with my scooter anymore," because he really loved the sound of running over cans. But he cannot do it anymore because I see myself as the can. So he was really having crashes of everyday life experiences. And so it was changing this perspective and his relationship with the non-human. So this is something that could be interesting for what Stefano Waleni, a philosopher, a game scholar philosopher from the University of Malta, is calling about the media turn in philosophy with games. He's claiming that books can be very good for defining concepts, for explaining concepts. And in a game, if you want to define a concept, you should use a slide and an explanation. And that's not a really good gaming experience. But what he's telling is that games can be artifacts to play with concepts. And what we see in this example is how to play to this game can lead us to talk about post-human narratives without reading Braidotti or Haraway with 15-year-old kids. And trying to do the cultural mediation around that. Also, how this anecdote, let's say, at the point of individual change, can lead also to collective action. This is some difficulty of the project. Insights from other sessions, what happened? So these sessions didn't work well. I have to tell. These ones didn't work well for the archives. Probably you know Overcooked. It's a game where you have to manage a cuisine, and it's a cooperative game, very funny. And I make two interpretations of why maybe it didn't work so well this session. One of them is, for example, in Overcooked, I wanted to talk about precariousness of job and stress, and maybe it was not the better game to talk about it. Maybe I'm thinking of it. I have to go back to that data through the reflexive game design of Khaled, where it tells that for a game to be reflexive, it has to have more clarity than stealth over what you want to criticize or reflect on. And also, if the game has too much immersion, because they were really immersed, it's difficult to pause, slow, relax, and then have some reflection. You have to really force it. And in my mediation, I didn't get to, it was very forcing. It was breaking the rhythm of the game all the time. So I didn't get to any critical reflection. And also for the part of ending, what I find with this game is it's a game about a fox who has to take care of their puppets, and it has a clear environmental message. Pollution is bad, humans pollute the environment. So the message is so clear that it's difficult to make questions around it because it's too much clear. And I found it very difficult in my case. And also, it doesn't make you any disruption about what you think. It's in the comfort zone in some kind. This could be an interpretation of a bad selection of game, but it can also be a pedagogical mediation not aligned with the research questions. One critical feature is that in these cases, instead of asking them to make questions, I ask them to write themes, just themes. Like, we are playing this game, and I write pollution. But what's the question behind? What's the conflict? And that was a problem. Because if you center, for me, when I centered the process in content, it didn't work. Because then they didn't reflect and they didn't get into conflicts. And then all the questions were raised by me, and it felt forced. And also, they didn't have time to reflect on that. So when this happened in the beginning of the sessions, I turned it to ask them for questions. And then we go for papers, please. In papers, please, you act like a frontier controller. Is that the right word?
Border patrol.
Border patrol, yes. What I was telling, yes. You act as a border patrol, and you have to decide who enters and who don't in your country. And you have to perform well because you need your wage to pay your family. If not, your family can die. So this is the dilemma that you have to play in the game. So we were playing the game, and in small groups, they were starting, because all of them are immigrants or sons of immigrants, they were having this big discussion about prioritizing my family, who has already passed the frontier, or trying to help the ones that has yet to pass. Also, one of them was really shocked about this screen that you see in here. This is the wage. Sorry, it's in Spanish. That this is the performance and your money that you have to maintain the family. He was really shocked. He was telling, this is life. When I have a family, there will be days when I won't be able to eat in order to support them. So in here, he was really reflecting his situation to the game. And as Miguel also talks about this player skin, this player subject who also put some kind of subjectivity in there, there was a very thin skin between how he was playing and interpreting the game, and who was outside the game. This barrier was very thin. And he also told, I'll become an entrepreneur to bring my family to Spain. His parents are not with him in Spain. So he was very in this kind of entrepreneur mentality of, I will succeed and I will raise myself out from this situation to bring my family with me. So for me, this situation was very hard to address, because how do I criticize or make critique of this entrepreneur mentality without getting into despair? Because he's really holding to this possibility. This is something that I found very difficult to address. And then we started to talk about illegal immigration, the concept. What does it mean? Because for some of them, it's something natural. You are illegal or legal. And then we started to talk about what does it mean to be illegal immigrant? Who decides that? It's something that the state decides, because in the game, it happens the same. You change the policies each time. And we started to look at this map of how much is the value of your passport, depending to how many countries you can travel without a visa. And they were comparing and competing between their countries. Like, I'm from Italy. Ooh, let's see, how many points do I have? I'm from Pakistan. Oh my God. I'm from, I don't know, Italy or Ukraine, or we have someone from Peru also. Well, they were competing between them. And also talking about their representation in different games. But the point of it, and it was also very tied to the political elections and the right wing that was happening at that time. The point of it is that as in the walkthrough, they didn't get to the revolution in the Papers, Please, because you can have some kind of revolution. It became some kind of classical dystopia. In a classical dystopia, there is no escape. So what happened is that they were telling the future will be worse, the same or worse. It's not right to ask for passport, but there has to be some order. So actually, we played this game. I don't know if they were questioning this system or reaffirming in it. So attention to it. And also we have some, how to say, some interesting experience in the second season. For the second season, we played the game again, and then what happened is that we had two players, okay, two girls. One of them had a lot of experience, and the other one has non-experience with the games. And she was in the club. She was 12 years old, and she was like, I really love the political discussions in here. I'm getting in here just because I love the discussions. And then the way they played the game was very different. So for Papers, Please, what happened with this girl who has no experiences, no previous experience at all, some experience with mobile games and wherever, is that she was seeing that it was an injustice situation where the people who had to pass the frontier were obliged to do that, because if not, they will starve. The people who has to shoot them, if they passed the frontier, were obliged to shoot them. And she, as border patrol, had to do the work. So what she did was, I will sacrifice myself. I will start to let everyone pass. And she started to let everyone pass. And then she got an ending where she got into prison, and there was a protest in the game. And she was so happy with that ending. She said, I went to prison, but at least the other people could make the revolution and could things turn better. So when she shared this gameplay experience with the other girl, they got mad. They got crazy. Like, what are you doing? You're playing the game bad. You're supposed to win the game. You're supposed to perform your work well. Because they were comparing their experience with another game that is very similar but not have this much of political interpretations. So what would you find in here also happened with Stillness of the Wind, but what you have in here is what Hayo, I'm mentioning here, is how a lot of research is focused in the specific didactics of a game. And it is underestimating how the players are making meaning of the games. In this situation, putting two different peoples who has different background with games are making them compare their personal play to others. And they enrich in this process because they are together and they can compare it. Also, another example would be for Every Day the Same Dream. I talked about this game before. So what happened is that one of them was telling, after playing this game, it reminded me of my father, who has a bullshit job. All the afternoons, he comes home and he complains all the time about the bullshit job that he has. And he was shocked of the game because he was telling, I didn't think it was such a common problem in society that someone would make a game about it. So this is important for critical consciousness because he's getting his personal problem he's politicizing this content. He's making it collective. We have a second participant who says, with the first game, I saw that my life only consisted in going to school and playing video games to escape. Since then, once a week, I try to do something different. Go for a walk, play board games with my family, different things. So here we have an individual change, let's say, and again, it appears the difficulty of making this a collective action, but we're seeing that it has some impact on them. Also for they play in the different games. One of them was telling, with the club, I've started wondering whether it's okay to enslave bots when I play Minecraft. They're just pixels, but it feels kind of bad. So again, he's asking about the ethics of with these digital entities. He's asking about who are them even while they play. It also for unpacking, and I ended the examples and get into the conclusions. Just two more examples with unpacking. It's a game about following the life of someone who moves from when it is a child to like adulthood, let's say. And you don't see the character till the end of the game. So you have to, how to say, to deduct, to imagine who is that person from his objects. So one of the things that we were speaking between us is, what will my belongings say about me when I die? What will be my heritage? Heritage, I don't know. Mi legado.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
It's legacy.
Legacy. Which will be my legacy? It seems like a song. And also, as there were some conflict between what is the gender of this character of the game, because they were telling, okay, we found a tampon, it's a girl. And the other says, no, maybe it's a transgender people, transsexual, and I introduced, maybe it's intersex. How do you know if it's a girl? So we had an hour discussing about that. And one important point is that we started to put examples of objects that were more tied to one gender, and later they are tied to other gender. For example, high heels. Before they were more tied, is the correct word? Okay, more tied to masculinity, and now for femininity. And what was making them reflect was about, what about the future? In the future, if they don't have pictures of me, will people be able to tell my gender from my belongings? So this is something about disrupting what can be possible in the future. The point of this is that a lot of this a lot of this process in this session, it was very tied to my materials and not much into the game. So I don't know to which extent the game is making these conflicts and these processes. And for the last example, I would like to talk about Townscaper. They were playing to try to build the utopian community. I told them to build a utopian society, and we started by something very special for one of them. We searched for a video for the Ukrainian young person that we had, of his childhood in his small village. Because every time that we discussed about this utopia, he was referring to his childhood. So we found a Russian video about the surroundings of the river where he played. And we started all the signs from this memory that he has. And when we started, I say this because there is a great work of building trust and affects in the relationships of the group and also with me. And while we were doing all these designs, one thing that happened is that one of them built this tower that you see in here. And he said, and I'm the mayor who is in the top. I rule everything. And the Ukrainian young person told him, you're like Putin. And then he felt bad about that, and he said, okay, I will change my design. I will make 2 more leaders. And then he made 2 more leaders. And he said, and I don't have the tallest tower. So we started a conversation about what is a good model of society if we can govern ourselves. And they're kids, and they have 16 years old. They haven't read the Leviathan, but they were saying, man is wolf the man. There has to be a charismatic leader who brings order. He was referring to Pedro Sanchez, the president of Spain, because he's handsome and he's charismatic. And some other designs that happened is that they started to build social services and public services. Schools, they wanted libraries. They said that the first thing that they did in the game was a soup kitchen paid by the taxes of the rich. So this demonstrates the context in which these kids are imagining their world and how how they, how to say, it is showing a very particular approach of how they see the world. And something very interesting that happened is that one project started like a speculation village. They did a speculation project of a hotel, this hotel that you can see here, this red thing in here. I have this. Yes. I've used it. So they started building that, but then they found this tool. In the tool that you can see here, okay, you can move the sun. And if you move the sun, you can make better pictures with different shades in the night and so on. But what they found is that moving this, using this tool, the shade of the hotel was into the house of, into the buildings of the people. So they were telling that the clothes couldn't dry and they didn't have sunlight. So they did a project of demolition and they demolished the hotel. And they say, fuck that. So what we find is in here is critical play. Like they find in this tool and they tell that every time that they enter the club, they enter in kind of a critical mindset atmosphere. And that makes them question how the way that they play. And this is the last slide before the conclusions. That would be this second season project at design, okay? In this case, I also told them, build a utopian village, build a utopian neighborhood. He didn't care about what I told. And he just started to build scaffolds. And he was telling, I started to building scaffolds because I like them. I didn't think about any lore. I made it up later. So me as the educator could insist in this, in what he's supposed to do in my design of the activity, but I let him play. And he invented the lore afterwards. And then he invented that this post-apocalyptic society, that they are separated between different social classes, and he started to talk about the policy system and the resource system and how they fit each other. And then through the dialogue, we tried to engage of how to make the revolution in his system. And something very curious is referring to a movie, a Spanish movie, El Hoyo. I don't know now the English name. The platform could be? Yes. So referring to the platform, his future revolution would be rotating the hierarchies. So it's like, it will be always oppression, but at least we distribute the oppression. We will be rotating that. So it was not till a mate in the group told him, why don't you just build a single platform? You can change whatever you like in the game. And we will be everyone equal. So these are some examples of things that happen that are improvised. It's teaching by emerging design, also in the literature. So with this, I reach into the final thoughts, is that one thing that I'm seeing is that there's a lot of data. I will have a really big effort of summarizing everything, but something that I found is that I find something special in what I'm doing because I really like it. And I've always known what it is happening here. I've also known what is happening here. Here there is a lot of fitted centers. I'm talking about Copenhagen and Denmark. There are a lot of fitted centers where they have these also rooms full of computers. And I've seen social educators with young people doing a very great job in social cohesion through games, and talking with them about their personal issues and try to connect, not only with the educator, but between them. So there's a great work happening right now in Denmark. There's also the Center for Digital Play, who has the games curriculum on this. And these days, I've been meeting with the people who are from the critical utopian research, critical utopian action research, who also works with young people. And it could be a great opportunity to introduce into these spaces different games. Can be indie, cannot be indie, but to try to do these games literacy. Something, this is just the last slide, something important that I'm finding within my research is that if I'm doing action research, there has to be some benefit for the community. And this is the critical thing that has built trust with the community I'm working with. And the objective because I started myself doing these sessions, but the objective was to build a team. Now we have a team. We trained a team of 4 educators, including me. But the important part, and this is something that Lucas Ramada do very well, it's not me who has to be the reference of the center, neither the practice, neither the young people. It has to be the people who are in the center, who are working with them, because we couldn't replicate this if it depends only on me. So the working of the center is getting the just reference for them. And on research questions, I'm finding that affects, plagiarism, appropriation, and voices are something key. Also, that learning, I cannot measure learning because I don't have pre and post and exams or tests or assess. What I can trace is the discussions that they have and their perceptions. That's something that I can talk about. And one of the things I have to talk about is what was really the influence of this game selection, because it's so tied to the context that it's very difficult to say that if you do the same with the same game, it will happen the same. So how do you translate this to other contexts? It is so dependent on the educators that have to really, to appropriate the game for them. And with that, I have to say that we will be exploring it, as we're trying to call it like critical utopian gaming pedagogy. As I was telling, critical for denouncing, utopian for telling what we want. Gaming and not games, because we found that it's more important the act of playing than the game itself. And also pedagogy, because I cannot account for what they learn, and I'm more interested in the broad practice of what is happening, the actions, the impact that it has, my mediation in that. And with this, I end, and I have to thank you for listening this. It's been 56 minutes. Thank you so much. And if you have any question, we'll be very glad to hear them and to respond to them. Thank you.